bumper and everything.
I know, right? Perfect. Welcome to the Lodge Student Ministry Podcast. This is your host, Pastor Cody Moorhead, pastor of the Lodge Student Ministry. And today I am joined by my co-host,
Mark.
the worship leader of NGen.
That's me.
Mark Mellinger.
That's the guy.
The one and only Mark Mellinger. But today we are also joined by a very special guest, Brian Ferguson.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, Brian. Okay, so Brian is one of our elders at our church, and also, Brian, what else do you do in your life?
What else do I do? Well, I mean, I'm a dad.
Your dad?
It's
like Barstool. Don't tell me.
Just like Barstool, don't talk about outside jobs.
But yeah, no. So you're dad, and you're a personal friend of me, and a great guy in general. So all around great guy.
All around, I try.
Yeah.
Work though. It's a government agency that will remain unnamed.
Yeah. He could tell us, but then he'd have to kill us
for public consumption. Anyway, no, yeah.
Yeah, so Brian has a really cool job, which we really can't talk about. But that's not actually why we call Brian on the podcast today, because we want to talk to Brian about something else. And we want to talk through some different things that we thought were relevant and helpful. And we've been doing this series right now in youth group called Habits. So we've been talking about really like what are habits that we have, what are things that, happen on a regular basis, and like how do we establish good habits, how do we have bad habits, so on and so forth. And one of the things we've been talking through is youth group and like the consistency of coming to youth group and why it's so important. Like why coming to youth group every week, week in and week out, even if you don't want to, is important to your development, your faith, right? And so I know after talking with you and being your friend, for the past, 4 years, how long, 4 years since I got here?
Yeah.
Right?
I think we started coming in February of 2017.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And you guys have this really cool story.
2018.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2018. So it was like right. Basically, you guys got here like the same time I did.
Yeah,
really.
It was a couple months after. Yeah.
So you have this. Caleb Baird just commented on our video and said, "My habit is this podcast." So. Hey, can we show that title graphic? That habits. Like this is just cool. Like this is just like this collage of all the things, right? That people are into. But yeah, like so you guys got here right after I got here, and right after we kind of started the lodge, and I just wanted to bring you on because you guys have this unique church history, and this you and your wife Cheryl have this unique history in your walk with Christ. Of the churches that you came from, that is really quite different than probably a lot of the students that we have. They probably have never been exposed to anything like that, right?
Maybe some have. I mean,
maybe some have. Yeah.
I know. I mean, there's several churches in the Jackson area that are very similar to churches I grew up going to. A lot of it. I don't want to be disparaging to anything because obviously I am where I am because of a lot of that, Of
course.
So it's just a matter of finding the right balance eventually. Everybody kind of has to. I find that some people, when they get away from church or they find something that they found unpleasant about their church experience, at times they can throw everything out. Mm-hmm. Instead of just picking the things that maybe being more choosy about what they throw out and what they keep. And a lot of times, I've seen friends of mine who have decided that they're out and they're out all the way. They're completely had nothing to do with church anymore. Not sure what they believe, is God even real kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I guess, to certain things that they grew up with, and as they get older and are able to explore their faith for themselves, they, it's there has to be there's a balance you have to strike, because it could be dangerous as far as like staying consistent with like your habits and stuff. One of the things that I found, because I grew up in a very conservative home, going to a very conservative, Baptist church.
Yeah.
And I went to a Baptist seminary that was very conservative. Lots of rules, lots of, they like to call them standards.
Yeah. Standards.
Standards.
Yeah.
And you're wrong because you don't have them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just like we do, right?
Yeah.
So, and looking back on it, I think some of the things, because I grew up in a youth group, and I was kind of brought up in a way, and I believe those things. And looking back, it's kind of cringy now, like some of the things like I look back on, that you're like, oh yeah,
I think we as adults have like the gift of like hindsight, where you can look back and you be like, oh man, I believe that, or like especially as you mature, like in your walk with Christ, you're like, oh my gosh, I believe that, and now, that was so wrong.
Yeah, or I do that now, and I used to look down on people who did that. Yeah,
like, exactly. Like, oh my gosh, those terrible people. Like, I think it's cool because I would agree. Like I value your friendship. I value you as a person, and you have this very unique outlook on life that is so fun to just dissect and talk through. Like like when we live together and we play sports together, we go golfing together. Like we have spent hours talking about all these different things and like the different thought processes you have, and like we don't agree. I mean, we don't agree on everything.
Sure, no. I mean, I'm sure there's probably there's several things we've talked about. We're like, I don't know about that.
Exactly.
But
you're going like, I don't know, you're crazy, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, wait, right?
Yeah. So no, but some of the things as you get older, you find that exploring what you've been told all your life for yourself is something that you're gonna have to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, as you go to college, if you, I know a lot of the young people in the youth group. I'm sure they'll probably go to maybe a public university or something like that, where they're going to be, just bombarded with different thinking.
Oh yeah.
And it may be stuff they agree with, it may be stuff they disagree with, it may be something that changes their mind. But learning how to think and how to understand why do you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
I think it's very important as you get older and meet new people. Because you're going to meet new people that you're going to like, and they're going to have very different views than you.
Yeah.
And or they may have not very different, but similar backgrounds, but different views on some things.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful because, that it's just not, I believe like them now because I just want to fit in.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think that's a thing that a lot of young people, will get into. And I think that's a thing you can, not just for negative, it can, I say negative, it can be either direction of the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
It could be a very, I guess, a liberal thinking or a very conservative thinking of the spectrum of, I want to do this because I want to fit in with the people who I'm like, and I'm going to take on these beliefs.
Exactly.
Instead of thinking about why do I believe that?
Yeah.
Or, it's a finding answers.
Yeah,
on your
absolutely.
Own, finding truth on your own.
I love how you said that too, because like, I think it all boils down to, and I think you and I both, we've talked about this too, like it all for us, the thing that we always come back to, and I think the thing that would be the breaking point for us really to be close friends is that we always take it back to Scripture and Jesus, right? Sure. Like it always all comes back to that. It's like all the other stuff doesn't matter. Like all the opinions of the world, all of this other stuff, it all comes back to what does the Bible say? And what did Jesus live? Right? Like, sure. how do we, so no matter what, whether it's liberal or conservative, and I think a lot of times, and I want to clarify too, like when we talk about liberal or conservative, when it comes to like our faith, it really is not a political thing, right?
No.
Liberal means free, right? Like this freedom. And then conservative is the idea that like you want to closely follow the rule set. Like, so there's freedom and then there's rules, right? So there's these different ideologies that go with it. So it's not really like a political thing, like liberal versus conservative. Right. We hear that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Within the realm of, I guess, Christian thinking. There's also, I think most outside, I guess, politically liberals look inside and be like, they're all conservatives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just what flavor are they, right?
Exactly.
So, but there is that, and of course, I grew up very conservative. So my youth group experience was that of, we had youth activities, we did fun stuff.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely.
Like anything else. So it's kept people engaged and to come back.
Yeah.
But I guess where it was a little different is like there was always like preaching, and when I say like preaching, it wasn't like a lot of the sermons you hear like on Sunday with Pastor Kyle was like preaching like early 1900s like tent meeting style preaching.
Yeah,
right?
like yelling preaching.
Yelling
right?
preaching.
Yeah,
right.
yelling preaching.
Yes.
Yeah, I had one student was like, "Hey, I found this YouTube with like this pastor, and he just kind of yelled the whole time." And I'm like, "Oh, I know."
Yeah. Oh,
and
you can find. You go to a black church a lot of times, you're going to get preaching like that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it per se, but sometimes it can be used as a bully pulpit, really. It can be just to preach things that aren't necessarily scripture, more preference than Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's where some of the soul searching comes in for people who have grown up with it. They've been told they have to believe this way.
Yeah.
And when they get older, they start reading the Bible and none of this is in here.
Oh yeah,
what
absolutely.
I've been told. And so, there's that knee-jerk reaction. But anyway, no, I don't take away my youth group experience. It was fun. It was good. We were engaged. It was a lot of fun at the time, looking back on it.
Yeah.
But, it's as we got, moved on from that, you realize that I can't necessarily, this isn't real life, I guess.
Yeah. I think there's a cool thing too that comes with that. Talking about habits. And one thing, like I'll tell like Mark, one thing that Mark has realized is that like his faith is his own. It's not his youth groups or his parents, it's his own, right? And like Mark, I want to talk about a little bit, like you've had this experience where you realized, when do you think you definitively were like, this is my faith and I have to take it seriously?
It was like near the end of my high school, like into college time. Like at that point, like I was my transportation for like church in the morning and youth group on Sundays. So like I was like, it was about that point for me where I was like starting to think like, oh no, this is like a thing I have to do. It wasn't just like, oh, mom's telling us to go to church on Sunday morning and to dress nice. It turned into like, oh no, this is something that I need to commit to. Like this is something that I need to make a decision in my life and I need to be intentional about this.
Yeah.
Like that was about like that was about when I like started like understanding how much more it's more about your I'm not
like your personal relationship with Jesus, and it's not about what everybody else has told you.
Right.
Like, and Brian, I was going to say, like, I think that's something we've talked about, especially with both of our youth group experiences, our church experiences growing up. Like I grew up, my mom and dad love the Lord. I never question that. Like my mom and dad are amazing, awesome, godly people. Like I'm so thankful for my mom and dad. And you feel the same way about your parents too.
Sure.
Like, and there's things, but there are things that my mom and dad believe, even to this day, that I don't agree with. Yeah. But it's not because I'm some terrible son who hates them and hates everything they did.
Right.
It's because I had to take my faith into my own hands and realize my personal relationship with Jesus Christ is the most important thing in my life. And when I did that, I had different experiences. I had different people that I interacted with that had wisdom to share with me. I had different thoughts about Scripture. I learned more about the history of the Bible. I learned more about the uniqueness of the languages that So I learned all this other stuff that were contexts that my parents necessarily didn't have, and they didn't have that. That they weren't. They're incredible. They know the Bible. My dad knows the Bible like the back of his hand. But there's this unique experience of making your faith your own, where you're relearning all these things that you really learned as you were growing up. And so like with you were talking about, this experience you had with your youth group, how it was a good one. It's like your youth group experience, like you might have had bad experiences within the church, which I did too. but you making your faith your own, making this habit of like really making your faith your own was what really kept you in the church, right?
Right. Oh yeah. It's a finding it, and when we moved up here from out of state, we kind of, Cheryl and I both, we kind of took it as a time to explore, like how can we make our faith our own? Where can we find that we strike the balance of not just church, but how does that engage and connect us to the real world? With real people who have living outside the church, because you can find church can almost become a subculture, within the world itself. So and that's not, and if you read the Bible, that's not really the job of the church. Church is to be in the world, and out and seen and talked to, and everybody should know, everybody should know who you are and what you are, and that should be something that people want to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't necessarily be a monastery.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and that's definitely not I don't think, reading the Bible, I don't think that's a biblical way to approach the church, but.
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing is when we look back at, I think they're the biggest frustration I had. And I'm sure like you can shed light on this too. Like I have frustrations with my church experience growing up because I was this crazy ball of energy kid who really was not, I'm not the mold of the good Christian kid that behaves himself. Like I never have been. Now I didn't do these crazy things, but like I was definitely the black sheep in our church. And the thing that always frustrated me is like, okay, all these things you want checked off your list, like I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I'm not going to parties, and not having sex, like I'm not all these things that you put on your ticker tape list, and still I don't fit in. Like still I get treated like I'm not this, like I'm some like horrendous kid to be around because I was crazy, right? And because I didn't fit this mold of behavioral expectations that the church had for me, right? And so I had this crappy experience. But I when I started to take my faith as my own, I really quickly learned that was people. That wasn't Jesus, right? Because like the Jesus that I knew and loved and worshiped was not this Jesus that was like, hey, listen, if you don't act the way I act, if you don't talk the way I talk, if you don't do the things I do, then you're not worthy. The Jesus I served and worshiped and read about in Scripture was this loving, compassionate, kind Jesus that spoke truth equally with grace and truth, right?
Right.
So like with your experience growing up in your church, like what were some things that you noticed that people did that really, really hurt or messed with you? But then now as an adult, you're like, okay, that was just people, and they didn't like. There's like the Father forgive them for they know not what they do. You know what I'm saying?
The same activity happened. You got to understand, it's not just the same type of things happen as an adult as happened as a teenager. So there was the looking. If you didn't act a certain way, you didn't do a certain way, you didn't come to church. 3 services a week. You were. It's like, hey, why weren't you at church? What's going on? Well, which is okay to ask that, but when you're within that, when you know why people are asking, it's not like they're not asking because they're concerned about you. They're asking you to pressure you. You should have been at church. Why weren't you there?
Yeah,
it's not a. Are you? Were you sick?
It's like a passive aggressive guilt trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Hey, were you sick and that was why you weren't at church? Right. Not like, hey, were you sick? Are you okay?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, there was that, and it's like, well, maybe I wasn't there because I've got 2 kids at home, and they're really young, and we're tired, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes
exactly, yeah,
and it's one of those things that life happens, and so there was that, and if you don't act and follow the rules just a certain way, you don't lay out, if you don't follow exactly what you're expected to follow. You know, you get the same type of attitude you get for why weren't you at church?
Exactly.
It's the same type of attitude you get or for why didn't you do this?
Or
why do you do that? Well, you know.
You do that?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or they'll talk about somebody else, something that they do that you also do.
Yeah.
Well, so and so they do that, and it's like knowing full well that I also do that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh, you also do that, but you just don't do it. You know, you don't do it out in the open, right? Like it's like you do the same exact. You know, you have the same vice. You do the same stuff. But you do it privately, and you do it in the, you know, it's this idea of like this duality of personality. You know what I mean?
Right. And the thing is, like you say, the way we were talking, it sounds like, you know, at home we do drugs or something, right? And
yeah,
we all sit around and get high. It was nothing like that. It would kind of blow your mind. It's like, oh, you went to the movies and watched Star Wars. You know, like
right, like
right, yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, I did, yeah, you got me,
yeah.
Like,
you know, the movies, you know, you could be watching anything in there. People don't know what you're going in to watch.
Exactly.
You know?
It's like this undertone of like, if you don't do exactly what I want you to do, you're a terrible, horrible sinner. And I just think of that like scene in Matthew 9, right, where Jesus goes to Matthew's house. And we were at Life Group. We were doing this Andy Stanley series. Like we were listening to this, and I loved how he put it. It's like you know, the tax collectors and sinners, and Jesus just says like, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick, because the Pharisees are literally outside of Matthew's house, talking about how Jesus is spending time with these terrible, horrible people in front of them. Right? It's just like this open judgment of like, well, you don't do exactly what we do, so you're terrible.
Right.
You know?
I mean, and there's, you know, if you want to get real deep,
Yeah.
You know, there's like studies, academics, you know, studies and what like the psychology behind different, and I hate to use this word on this, you know, in this platform, cult, you know.
Yeah.
But there are aspects of it that, you know, within any type of group that you're in, any type of group.
Oh yeah.
A leader or an organization or whatever can start to take on unhealthy tendencies.
Oh yeah.
To where they're not just helping you along the way, but they're controlling you.
Oh yeah, exactly. Where it's just this gradual manipulation of like, okay, if you don't, that we're all doing the same things, and if you don't do the same things we're doing, you're out. Like
right, like you're not.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly. It's like you haven't met your monthly quota of you know, Jesus's or crosses or, you know, whatever. You know, it's like, it's all these like stipulations. And it's like, Jesus just like did away with all of that. Like Jesus was like, listen, the only habit that is important is the care of widows and orphans, right? That's the only religious, like James says it, you know, James 1:27 is like the only religion, the only rote religious thing that you should do regardless is the care of widows and orphans. That's what we're supposed to do. Outside of that, love people the way that Jesus loved them. Right? Like outside of that, the only thing that matters to any in our faith is to love God and love people. Like that's what I think is so cool that our vision statement of the church is love God and love people. And we just say it all the time. People are like, oh, that's so simple. Like, shouldn't it be like more complex? No, it's pretty simple. That's pretty much what Jesus said to the Pharisees when they're like, what's the greatest commandment? He's like, love God and love people. Right. I mean, like, yeah, he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. Well, show it. And the second is like, love your neighbor as yourself. Like, but it's love God, love people. That's it.
Right. And, you know, it comes packaged in it. Right. Like the idea is, you know, you eventually you want to have a better relationship with Christ, right? You know, you want to have that, but you got to be careful, you know, forcing, that's where we have, I guess, you know, if you read in Scripture, it talks about liberty. We have, you know, what may be offensive to you may not be offensive to Mark.
Yeah.
You know, he may struggle with something that I don't struggle with, right? Or he may find something that, I guess, takes him away from his relationship with Christ, but it doesn't necessarily have the same effect on me, right?
Yeah.
And so, but for Mark to, you know, to then to teach that as a doctrine, that his preference about this thing, that bothers him, to then teach, to say, well, you know, you shouldn't do that either.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it hurts you because, you know, now you've got somebody trying to control what you do, rather than letting the Scriptures and Jesus control your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's not my job to convict you.
Right.
Right? That's what we think, though. Like, we think, like, oh, I've got this conviction. Like, okay, I'll give you a good example. Like, my conviction, right, is like one part just medical and one part biblical, right? Like, I don't drink. Like, I just don't drink. I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life. Like, and like, there's a part of it that is like, there's a part of it that's biblical because I don't want to be enslaved by anything, right? Like Paul says, everything is permissible to me, but not everything is beneficial, and I won't be mastered by anything. And there's a part of me that, like, I've been to baseball games and like the smell of beer, like, I like it a lot. Like, and I used to be ashamed of saying that, like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person for even. But the truth is, like, why would I be ashamed of that? Like, I've not done anything. There's no sin attached to that, right?
Right.
But it's like, I don't want to open myself up to the possibility of being stuck at a place where I have to have that to function, right? And the other side of it, that's the spiritual side. The other side of it is I'm adopted, right? So, like, I have no idea what my family history is. I don't know if alcoholism is in my blood and in my DNA. Like, I don't know if that's something I have a proclivity to. And I have a super addictive personality already. So it's like, I'm not going to mess with that, right? But I can't expect that somebody else has the same conviction that I have.
Right. I mean, we use alcohol as an example. I mean, because there's a long historical tie to morality with alcohol. Especially in the United States.
Exactly.
In Prohibition, it was illegal. It's basically tied to legality with morality type thing, and it's a very kind of, and still to this day, it's but it could apply to anything. Mark could be addicted to video games and he does nothing but sit around and play video games and eat Cheetos all day, right? And and for Mark, obviously, that's not healthy. Yeah. For him to be engaged in it, where I have no problem with it. I can sit down and play video games for an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and be done and go on about my day. But that could be anything. Anything that it's not necessarily. Are video games sinful? I mean, no. Maybe some are, but that's another topic for another time. But is it in itself to sit down and play video games that's sinful? No. But is it to Mark?
It might be,
right.
But that's where it's conditional conviction, right? And just to clarify, because I know there's probably students watching this right now. If you're in America, the legal drinking age is 21.
Right.
So if you're drinking under the age of 21, and that's for anybody, it's sin because you're breaking the law. And we're told really clearly in Scripture that we're supposed to honor the law of the land. We're supposed to respect the law that's been given to us, right? So, like, that's a just something to put out there for our students. Like, if you're listening to this and you think like we're saying it's okay to drink, it is not. Now, if you're in other countries and legal drinking age is 16 or 18 or whatever, that's a decision that you should make with your parents. Like, but the truth is,
doesn't mean people in Michigan that you should drive to Canada.
Yeah, that's not what that means. Like, yeah, exactly. In fact, I would argue that would be sin because you're intentionally doing something. You're intentionally doing something to try and subvert.
I just hear a lot talk to a lot of people who are shocked about, like, when I was in high school, I used to drive over to Canada.
Yeah, just it was legal
because it's 19.
Yeah,
but
and that's So like, but it all comes down to, like, where's your heart? Where's your love for Christ? Like, the truth is, like, that shouldn't even be a thought. No, like, if we love the Lord, that shouldn't even be a thought. We're just looking for loopholes, right? Like, and I think that's why your walk with Christ is so cool and unique, because in spite of all the legalism, right, and in spite of all the very conservative nature of your upbringing, and not it's not like it's this negative, terrible thing. Like, it's actually a really good thing. You had such a good foundational base and knowledge of Scripture, and but I think the thing that is different between you and your friends who just walked away from the church is your understanding that, like, Jesus was at the core and that your love for Christ was the most important thing. And, like, that's the thing that I guess for students, like, as they're figuring this out, like, the thing I would say over and over and over again to students is, like, Jesus has to be at the core of every decision you make.
Yeah.
It's like, is this honoring to God or not? And that should be the question.
Yeah, for sure. It's you can get caught up in the church as an organization.
Oh yeah.
And not your relationship with Jesus.
Exactly.
And I think it's very easy to get the two confused about what I'm involved in and what and a relationship with Jesus looks like, as opposed to my involvement within this church as looking at it as an organization.
Oh yeah.
So, am I doing everything that the organization expects of me?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the wrong view to have.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, because it really has very little. Like Jesus was basically like, here's my expectation, right?
right.
Like my yoke is light, right? Like my burden is light. And like you look at like, okay, so 1 John 5:3 says like, for this is the love of God, to obey his commands, for they're not burdensome. It's like the commands that God gave us in the law, and in the New Testament, the things that God told us and instructed us and ushered us to do, like those things are like easy when we love Jesus.
Right.
Like, but that's the thing, like and I would say this too, and I think you would agree with this. Like, if we're having this tension or there's anything like, I don't want to get rid of that, then it always has to go back to, okay, well, how much do you love Jesus? Right? Like, do you love Jesus enough to let go of these things that, it's like the rich young ruler, right?
Right. Well, I saw something. Where did I see it on Twitter? Somewhere on the internet. It had it was like a flow chart of whether or not something's permissible. It's is it sinful? Yes. Don't do it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it sinful?
Yeah.
Then it had it down from that. It's like, is it sinful? No. Does my conscience allow it? Like, yes, no.
Yeah.
Does my conscience allow it? No. Then don't do it.
Exactly.
Then like the next thing, does my conscience allow it? Yes. And it's like, okay, like, does I think there's one other part to it. Like, does it cause others to stumble or something like that?
Exactly.
Does it cause others to stumble? Like, yes. Maybe think about.
Yeah.
You're right. And then if it meets none of those three things, then do it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. I think we'd be so much better off in the world if we just asked those questions. Like, we would be so much better off in our decision if we could just stop and make decisions based on that. Okay, is it permissible? That's a yes.
Right.
All right. Is it beneficial? That's a no. Okay, then don't do it.
Right.
Right. If there's no benefit, there's nothing that edifies the body of Christ. There's nothing that helps you grow in your faith or other people grow in their faith. Then why are you doing it? Like, it might not be a worthy endeavor. And there's that gray area of all the other stuff. It's like, okay, this job or that job or so on and so forth. It's like, okay, it really doesn't matter. Is it permissible? Yes. Does it benefit you? And does it benefit the kingdom first? Does it benefit other people in the kingdom? Yes. And if it's sin, no. Like, it's just, it's like easy standard to work off of.
Sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're talking about habits, and we're talking about kind of the things that, you experienced. What do you think sets you apart from your friends that you went to youth group with that walked away from the church?
I think there was a point where I told you, we moved up here.
Yeah.
I think really, there could have been a point where it has been like, okay, we moved up here and we're looking to make a change. That change could have been we just never go to church again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honestly, it could have been that.
Oh yeah.
But reality is, that there is truth. There is truth. There is an absolute truth.
Yeah.
The whole, I think it's very popular now to talk about finding your truth.
Yeah.
There is no your truth or her truth. There is the truth.
Exactly.
It's
there's truth and then there's not truth.
right. There's truth and there's not truth.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
It's like the whole idea that
There's true and false, not maybe. Right. Like
the whole idea that everything is relative. I mean, there are some things that are relative that you may have been taught that weren't, but there are some things that are absolutes.
Oh yeah.
The whole idea like that everything is relative is nonsense. But anyway.
Oh yeah.
So that's the idea of getting back on track.
Yeah.
Is what separates me from I guess some of them is it's just an understanding that there is truth, that just because somebody used something to manipulate you doesn't mean that there isn't truth behind it.
Yeah.
It means that they use something to manipulate. They use truth to manipulate you for their own gain.
Yeah.
Not that
truth is not true.
Not that the truth is not true.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the hardest thing to get though.
Right.
Because it feels like it's wrong. Like
Right, it feels wrong.
It then feels dirty.
Right.
Like that truth then is soiled.
Yeah.
But that's because of the person, not because of Jesus. Like
Yeah.
that's what I always think. Like, okay, the truth is the truth, but that truth, like if it's okay, if I told you, hey, like you shouldn't be messing around with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and it was all based on this set of standards that were messed up, or this purity culture thing. This is the big thing, right? Like purity culture, right?
Yeah.
Like the truth is purity culture is right. Like sex before marriage is this damaging thing to who we are. But the way that it was packaged and presented,
I'm pulling something up. Go ahead.
yeah, exactly. Right. The way that it was packaged and presented was this dangerous like rhetoric and ideologies. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself if you've ever made any sexual mistake ever.
Right.
Right. And it's like, no, that's not okay. Like, yes, but that makes then that like, it's like this pendulum swing, right? Obrick's pendulum, right? Is like, if there's this, all of a sudden the pendulum is going to swing all the way back on the other side. And I think that's what people do is they over course correct. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
it's a knee-jerk reaction, which I think, like I said, you have knee-jerk reactions in both directions.
oh yeah.
So-
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you're a pilot, so like over course correcting, you know all about that, right?
Yeah, it's
When you're flying a plane, if you over course correct,
right. You're off course.
yeah,
It does. I mean, it doesn't matter if you overcourse to the east or west, north or the south. In the direction you overcorrect, you're off course. It's
exactly.
it's like overcorrecting. When you're driving. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
if you start skidding and you jerk the wheel too hard the opposite direction, you're gonna all of a sudden lose control the other way.
Yeah. I just wanted to drop in there that you're a pilot.
Oh, yeah. I haven't flown.
My friend's a pilot.
I
whatever.
haven't flown in a long time. Long time. Very expensive hobby.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I miss it every time I see a plane.
Yeah.
What kind of plane is that? So
Brian knows how to fly, guys. That's a big deal.
it was
so
it was
cool.
fun.
So jealous.
One of the things that was beneficial from college.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a post that somebody put up about they're talking about the purity culture.
Yeah.
Because the whole, because like we talked about, anything can be taken to an extreme, right?
Yeah.
So you take the whole purity culture, no kiss, no holding hands, none of that, and
Yeah.
then you've done those things, right? And now you're dirty. Now
Yeah,
you're soiled.
exactly.
Now you can't be. Now Jesus can't use you, right?
Exactly.
So and it's used as guilt when there is truth behind the concept, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There's truth behind the concept, of keeping yourself till marriage, right? But then that's used as a form of manipulation, and then now that you've stumbled just this little bit and haven't met these high expectations of what it is, now you're riddled with guilt, right? And
exactly. And it's like if I mess up, if I step off the path, I'm immediately shunned. And I feel the shame and the guilt and everything that goes along with it. So yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more.
So it's not,
Yeah. It is tough. Like it's a tough line. But I love that. And I think that's a big thing for students too. It's like, okay, listen. Just because somebody used truth in the past to hurt you or manipulate you or used it for their own gain, it doesn't negate that truth, right?
Right.
It doesn't negate that truth. What it negates is that person's ability to use that truth.
Right.
Right? So like that person should not be using that as a manipulation technique. Like I know pastors all the time who use emotional manipulation, or they'll use data manipulation or all sorts of things to like push their own agenda or get their people to do stuff. It's like I really appreciate that about Kyle, actually, like our senior pastor. Kyle has never, in the 17 years I've known him, in the 10 years I've done ministry with him, utilized any kind of manipulation or guilt to make anything, make me feel a certain way. Right. Like he's just told me truth and said like, take it or leave it, but this is the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And sure, there's nothing wrong with, I guess, there's you learn techniques and different styles and stuff, and you go through seminary and school and whatnot. Right.
Yeah.
But there's a quote I read in a book a while back that was kind of really speaks to, I guess, kind of a gauge of are you doing this for the right reasons, right? It said the quote was, technique without heart is manipulation.
Yeah.
So I found that just in the context of, I guess, working with people, you may have these, whatever it is, whatever you do, if you're a manager, if you're professional, whatever, right? You have influence, right? And you use that influence, but you don't really care about the people, right? You're manipulating them.
Exactly.
Right? So
I tell Mark this all the time. Like, Mark, you can speak to this. Like I tell you guys all the time, like, I think there's a big difference between influence and manipulation. And I think they're very hard to discern the difference between. And it all comes down to the person's intentions that is influencing or manipulating it, right? Like, why am I doing it? Like, when I give you advice, I'm not giving it to you because I have something to gain. I'm giving it to you because it is truly in your best benefit. And I have prayed through and thought through before I give you that advice, so to make sure. But that same intention and that same advice given from the position of I have something to gain from this is manipulation. And I think that's the hardest thing to discern, because I think it comes with, one, you have to have that relationship with people too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have the relationship with Mark where Mark knows when I give Mark advice as his mentor that's right. And Kyle and I have that relationship where I know that when Kyle's giving me advice, I am prayerfully considering what he's saying, knowing that Kyle is just giving me advice for my own benefit, not for his own. And I think that's so hard too, because there are so many people in positions of power and authority out there who are manipulative and are pushing their own agenda. And so it's hard to put trust in leaders, right? Like, it's this hard thing, especially after the fiasco of, politics that we have in our country right now, where you can't trust anybody, and you can't trust the news, and you can't trust any news source, because it's like there's spin on all of them.
It's all fake news.
It's all fake news, right?
Fake news.
Yeah, like, worst deal in the history of deals, right? Like, but that's kind of the kind of the method, but yeah. So I think that's really good. Thanks, Brian. It's always good, man. Always good. Thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about some of this stuff.
Nope.
So
My
Brian,
pleasure.
are you on any kind of social media?
I am. I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
It's on Facebook and Instagram.
Under my Brian Ferguson.
Brian Ferguson. B Fergie.
There you go.
B Fergie 7?
7?
Is it 6? B Fergie 6? What is it on,
my
on Instagram?
My handle?
Your Instagram
BFerg65.
BFerg65. You heard it here first. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We are. Oh! I need to do a fun fact. Fun fact. Okay.
I thought you were gonna start beatboxing there.
No, I'm not. Okay.
It's like the beat drop.
Ooh, ooh. Fun fact. Caleb, we miss you. If you're watching this and you wonder why Caleb's not sitting here in his normal spot, Caleb and Callie are moving into a new house, and they are going to need lots and lots of help. So if you're a student in the Lodge Student Ministry, or you're somebody who attends our church, or you're somebody locally who wants to give a helping hand, reach out to Caleb Baird. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and let them know that you're interested in helping them move. They're going to need tons of help, and get them a housewarming gift. That'd be awesome. They deserve it. They're awesome people, but they're working on getting stuff ready to move tonight, so that's why he couldn't be with us. But he will be back soon and ready to rock and roll. But we missed him. But fun fact for the day, this is for Caleb. The first oranges were an orange. They were green. So there you go. So which came first, the color or the fruit? Let that blow your mind. Yeah. Is the color named after the fruit, or is the fruit named after the color? If it didn't even start off as orange. That's right. We're going to leave you on that cliffhanger. Until next time, make sure you follow the Lodge Student Ministry on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, and more. And check out our church at hotlstrong.com. Once again, that's HOTL strong.com for all upcoming events and stuff. Students, can't wait to see you on Sunday, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Peace out.